for another edition of PRosé with Vicki Locke and Cindy Woolley from C2 Communications.
Cheers!
Cheers!
So what you drinking today, Cindy?
Well, we're coming up to Irish, the national Irish holiday, right? St. Patrick's Day. So I figured a little Irish coffee, warm up.
Oh, I should say I'm drinking green beer, but I'm not. But I'll just pretend. Green beer, it's delicious. No, I'm drinking a lovely sparkling rosé. Absolutely delicious today.
Prosé.
That's right. That's what everybody asks. They call our show pros. No, it's prosé. Rhymes with rosé because we're PR pros who drink while we interview authors.
We have to add a little flair. That's the way it goes.
And we invite our audience to do the same thing. And our guest today is Jon Land. He's an award-winning USA Today best-selling thriller writer of close to 60 books, including the Caitlin Strong series, which is about a badass Texas Ranger who takes on drug dealers and serial killers. For a time, he took over the Murder, She Wrote series based on the Angela Lansbury TV show that Cindy absolutely loved. And now he's writing Margaret Truman's New York Times best-selling capital crime series. His latest is Margaret Truman's Murder at the CDC, which he calls his most personal book to date. We're going to find out why. Welcome, Jon Land, to PRosé.
Well, I'm in the right place because you guys drink while you're interviewing writers. And I'm a writer who drinks while he's writing.
Well, that's perfect.
I'm old school. I mean, worked for Hemingway. He got his 500 words done and he was finished for the day. I only wish I could get by writing 500 words a day.
What is your drink of choice when you're writing?
Actually, I have to confess, it's coffee. Caffeine is a drug, it's my third favorite drug. So, I mean, it's, it's reading a great book is like going on a mental vacation. Mm-hmm. And when I'm writing it, I get into a different zone too. I don't need anything to get me into this weird place where I'm no longer sitting at my desk. I'm in the world of my characters and I'm in the world of the book I'm creating.
I want to ask you about the Caitlin Strong series because you were writing about female protagonists before most people. And I don't know if you saw the movie, The 355. I'm thinking any of those women could play Caitlin Strong. What are your thoughts?
Let me tell you something. I'll take anyone to play Caitlin Strong because that would mean it was getting made. And we were close last summer and we'll be close again. These things keep getting recycled. I wrote the pilot, great production team. Helped me out every step of the way. And it was just like, I thought I had found in television, I thought I'd find something, of course, total delusion that I was finally going to be easy. That, boy, you write these pilots, you get great producers behind you, and we'll sell this baby. We got a showrunner attached. We had directors interested. We had a star, but the producers wanted somebody bigger. So the one that we had, we didn't boast about. And then nothing. It's like 2 pitches. I pitched Netflix, and it was a disaster. My audio, my internet kept going in and out. And I was better when I pitched TNT. But it was a great experience. I learned a lot. I've since written a couple more pilots. And what I've determined is writing for television is just another way to be disappointed. This is a career of sticking needles in your eyes. And it's just a different size needle and a different part of the eye. But I tell people that remember what it was like when you asked your dream girl to the senior prom and she said no.
Aww.
Remember that? Remember that what it felt like? Or you asked your dream guy to the senior prom, or the guy you wanted to ask you never did. Remember that and think about what that's like every day of your life. And that's really being a writer, because it's this constant roller coaster ride where you get, oh my God, things are great. Oh God, look what, so it's dips and darts. And
I gotta say though, a female Texas Ranger, that's gonna have to come back. Like, that's not dead. I think COVID probably interfered, but man, with everything that's going on in the world today, we need a heroine.
People
really
ask me, Vicki, you made a great point. I was doing it before anybody else was. Caitlin Strong was a female Jack Reacher when there were no other female Jack Reachers. Using comparing her to the great iconic hero from the Lee Child books. And people ask me, what inspired you? Where did you come up with this idea? And well, I'm honest. If you always tell the truth, you never have to remember what you said. And the truth is that Caitlin was born in a marketing meeting because we were trying to determine at my publisher what would be a good direction for me to go in, which is another way for a publisher saying your last series sucks, it's not selling. That's what they mean when they say we need to find another direction for you to go in. So we're sitting in a room with the head of sales and the head of marketing and the head of publicity, and everybody's throwing out ideas. And there was a gentleman named Tom Espenschied, one of the best salespeople in the mass market business, rack-sized paperbacks.
Yeah.
He went, thrillers are the number one genre, and 70% of all books are bought by women. Can anybody
Let's do the math.
A single female hero, in a thriller, and nobody could. Nobody could name one. So here's the problem: can't have a female Navy SEAL, Green Beret. I mean, there are special forces women, but they're not serving in combat. So how do you make up for that? And I said, right at the table, right there and then, I said, what about a female Texas Ranger? And let's call her Caitlin Strong.
Yeah.
I got to tell you, with the border crisis, with the political environment, this is ripe for someone to pick that up. And I don't want to jump into politics, but I just say, Texas Rangers, that's got to be like a marketing little gold mine. You gotta like dig for that nugget a little more, because I think it's there.
It's going to happen, but nothing happens. If you hear some of the stories of how long it took some shows to get on the air, how long it took some movies to get made. This is a business, as I said before, about you have to be able to deal with rejection. You have to be able to deal with failure, and you have to be patient. You can never quit. This is not a business. It's not a career for the faint of heart.
But it is a career, and I like that you're bringing this up, because I have done different writing workshops. I've published 2 or 3 books, business genre books, but one of the most poignant ones was, listen, it's okay to write to market, right? Like, it literally taught you how to research that market and see where you could find, genres that would be a good fit. And I thought, okay, there's the writing for the love of writing, but then there's, if you want to write and actually sell stuff, you got to think through bits and pieces, and take the rejection and keep writing and keep plugging through, the bits and pieces until you get there, right?
It's a great point. I think it was Gertrude Stein who said anybody who writes for anything other than money is a moron. But here's the problem: too many writers are chasing trends.
Yeah.
Too many writers are writing vampire books years after the vampire trend ends. Zombie books and so it's just, we saw this already. You can't chase trends. You have to write something that you love, because, and I say, people ask me all the time, what's the most important thing a writer needs to do? And I used to say, tell a great story. Now I say, have fun telling a great story, because if you have fun writing it, the reader will have fun reading it, because you, as the writer, are the first person who reads what you write. And if you're not your own number one fan, if you don't think you're the best thing going, if you don't think the book you're writing is the best one, the best it can possibly be, and better, or at least as good than whoever you want to compare yourself to,
Mm-hmm.
you're in the wrong business. Why should I believe in you if you don't believe in yourself?
Mm-hmm.
That's tempered by the fact, as Vicki slugs some more tequila or wine. It's okay. I have this effect on people. That said, no writer exists in a vacuum. We're all very subjective about our work. So you have to have people around you trust who are going to say, "Hey, I understand what you're trying to do. It's not working. You need to step it up a bit." So it's a fine line to walk, but it's a tightrope. And if you're a writer, you learn to balance yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Well, let's talk about your latest, Margaret Truman's Murder at the CDC. Now, why is this so personal to you?
I got it. When you read the book, which opens with after the typical prologue where something in the past is revisited. There's a mass shooting on the Capitol steps, and there's an insurrection that's in the planning. Well, everybody reads it and goes, "You were inspired by January 6th," and the truth is, no. I wasn't inspired by January 6th. I predicted January 6th, at least the mentality that allowed January 6th to be. I finished the book literally on election night in the wee hours of the morning when it looked like that Trump had been reelected. And the reason why this is such a deeply personal book for me was because I really kind of opened up about how I feel. And I was revolted by what they called alternative facts and just making stuff up, and the bombast and the angst and the constant stress coming out of the White House. And only later did we realize how close we came to losing democracy. And now when you read this book, it resonates a lot stronger than it would have because of how close we came on January 6th. Nobody knew what was really going on. Just looked like a bunch of nuts in costumes screaming like kids in color war at camp. I mean, it was asinine. It was stupid, but this is what it's going to take. This is an overthrow of the U.S. government. No, it was happening behind the scenes. So when I say now it was my most personal book, it was when I wrote it. That's even more the case because I've created a lot of villains in all the books I've written. I have never created one as reprehensible or irredeemable as Donald Trump. Never. An utter megalomaniac, a sociopath. Never done it. I couldn't create someone like that. People would say it's too, nobody would ever believe such a person could exist. So I was venting when I wrote Murder at the CDC. I was kind of exposing, kind of excising my demons. And it felt really good because when you write fiction, you can have happy endings and you can make the world whatever you want it to be. Reality is a little harder to do that. So,
that's the truth, right?
That's the answer. That's why it was such a personal book for me, because everything I am and what I feel and what I believe in is contrary to the people who believe in the big lie. And let's face it, come on. We got QAnon out there believing that pizza parlors are pedophile rings in the basement run by Tom Hanks, George Soros, and Hillary Clinton. Jewish space lasers set the California wildfires. This is true stuff. Sandy Hook never happened. It was just actors with fake blood for gun rights. These people believe this crap. There were hundreds of them in Dallas not too long ago waiting for JFK Jr. to rise from the dead. Hundreds of them. What are we talking about here? That kind of mentality. I just, that's reprehensible to me. Are people really that stupid? So I guess you could call Murder at the CDC the anti-stupid book.
And you say you like to write things that are real. So I'm wondering, I tend to like books usually better than any film or television show. And if you saw The Natural, I read the book first, loved it, thought I couldn't wait for Robert Redford to be playing the part, hated the ending of the movie, hated it.
Totally different. But I would say to you that one of the great things that's happened in this era is television becoming the place where all great books go, all these series being made into streaming series.
Like Game of Thrones, your favorite.
Oh my God, do I love Game of Thrones? But it goes beyond that. I mean, look at the job the HBO did with The Outsider, the Stephen King story, and even shows that are not based on books, but they feel like they are. Doesn't Ozark on Netflix feel like it was a book before it was a TV show? Didn't Breaking Bad feel that way? Well, Raylan Givens' Justified on FX, which is coming back, by the way, he was created by Elmore Leonard, but the series was very much the product of the TV writers. So I think that when I grew up in the 70s, when I came of age, I should say, in the 70s, it was the age of film. Film was where you went for the best writing, for the best creativity. The Godfather, Deliverance, The Conversation, The Godfather 2, Dirty Harry. These movies came out within 3 years of each other. I could go on and on and on about the great films of the 70s into the 80s. Movies like Die Hard that changed action filmmaking forever, the most influential action film since North by Northwest, the classic Cary Grant, Alfred Hitchcock movie. But then the movies kind of went into superhero mode and sci-fi mode and blockbuster mode, and the great writing it moved into television, starting with The Sopranos. Sopranos was the show that started it all, that you could make great TV that resembled film. And I believe books are part of pop culture, just like movies and TV are. So I consume pop culture. I'm as inspired to write a great book by the television shows I love as I am by the books that I love. Because to me, it's all the same thing. Tell a great story.
It's about the story, and it's about the thought process and the intriguing. I got to tell you, like, that was one of the things I loved about Murder, She Wrote. Just as a kid, I liked In the Heat of the Night. I liked, thriller, or like not thrillers. I liked things that had a storyline that developed, and I followed Murder, She Wrote for years because it made you think, and it was interesting, and it was a female that I could look up to. Even though it was probably some old lady in a child's body watching.
But something else. I think Murder, She Wrote, and I loved my experience writing those 6 books. I wish I was still doing it. They went in another direction. That's what they said. We're going in another direction. Don't you love when people say that to you? In other words, you suck. We hate you. In another direction. But I love those books, and there's something that isn't said enough about that TV series that spawned it. Back in the days before women were perceived as could be independent thinkers and live alone and not be classified, the old widow who lives on the hill. Jessica Fletcher was an independent woman with a great thriving career who did not define herself based on her relationships with men. She had friendships with men. And occasionally there was a little spark of romance in the series with that British spy. I'm blanking on his name, but there was always some give and take there when she would be in London, and he would always get her in all this trouble. But so I think in many ways, and I think Maude, many people would make the argument it was actually Maude in Norman Lear's show, but I would say that the first great independent actress portrayal was, when you think about it, it was Angela Lansbury playing Jessica Fletcher. A woman who was who took care of her family, who took care of her friends. All the qualities we normally ascribe to male heroes, she possessed. And you made a great point about the writing. Very few people know that Murder, She Wrote was created by the same people who wrote Columbo, Levinson and Link. So they transferred a lot of that talent and the quality. Some of the episodes of Murder, She Wrote, like Murder Takes the Bus, The Murder of Sherlock Holmes, rate with anything that's ever been done as far as mysteries go. And here's a little fun fact. You're going to love this. I've never said this, tell anybody this before.
Ooh.
I obviously never wrote a 7th Murder, She Wrote book, but here was what I was proposing to do. And maybe this is why they didn't want to work with me anymore, because I scared them too much. The plot was going to be this. Jessica Fletcher is in LA because one of her books is being made into a streaming series, updating things because, of course, there was no streaming TV back in the day. She's in LA and there's a murder on the set. And who is the LA detective who investigates it? Columbo. I was going to bring Columbo and Jessica Fletcher together. Now, why? People say you can't do that. Two different series. They were both owned by NBC Universal.
Oh, that would have been fantastic.
Both by the same studio, both owned by the same studio. So, yes, I could have done it. And can you imagine the dialogue between Columbo?
Oh, yeah. They were not even, the world wasn't ready for that. That would have been fantastic.
Murder, She Wrote. But fortunately, I haven't had that experience with the Capital Crime series, which is a much more organic fit for me. What happened with Murder, She Wrote was I couldn't write them the way my predecessor had been. So I had to make them what I thought they should be and what I thought the TV series was. So
That's Angela Lansbury calling you right now.
Angela Lansbury liked a post of mine, and it was really her Facebook page. She liked a post of mine when I announced that I was dedicating one of the books to her in the series, The Murder of 12. One of the best books I've ever written, not just in the Murder, She Wrote series, but one of the best books I've ever written. I dedicated to Angela Lansbury. I announced it, and she liked it, and so that was really kind of a thing. But I messaged her, and I have a friend who knows her well, and I said I'd love to send her a signed book, but could you get me an address? Never did. So I would still love to send Angela Lansbury a signed book.
Oh, she would love that, I'm sure.
I have to ask you, we had Robert Tagoni as one of our guests on PRosé.
Love Robert Tagoni.
Yes, great guy. And I love The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell. Love that book. And I had to ask him, I'm going to ask you the same question. He gets into the head of women perfectly in writing his female characters. And he said it's because he's got his wife and I guess his family, he grew up around very strong women. Is that the same for you?
No. And I've thought about this a lot. And basically, I don't write men or women. I write people. And I think when you're trying to write a woman, I don't care if you're what you are and you're trying to, you don't try to write anything. The person has to be, or she has to be herself, or he has to be himself, or they have to be themselves, depending on what kind of character you're writing. And I believe we're all the same, and we want the same thing. A hero is a hero. And the great thing about the Caitlin Strong series is I've switched the paradigm. She's the gunfighter. She's the loose cannon. She's the one who has trouble living among other people. If we look at the tradition of the American hero, which is the frontier, the one thing they all have in common is they can't live among men. They have to live alone. They have to be apart from humanity. And Caitlin Strong was always that way until she meets this man that she kind of falls in love with, but he's got these two teenage kids, and that activates her maternal instincts. I think it could just as easily be a man's paternal instincts, to tell you the truth. But I think in her case, the choices she's made, we can go into detail about this, but I don't think Caitlin wants children of her own, because gunfighters don't have kids. Gunfighters use their guns, and that's what defines her as it defined her ancestors, who were all men. But that doesn't mean she doesn't want to be a mother. And the thing about this series that really distinguishes it is Caitlin's relationship with those two boys. There are two examples of that. One is the opening of Strong Rain Falling, when she's taking her oldest surrogate son, Dylan, to visit colleges. Is there a more parental thing you can do than take a boy, a high school senior, to visit, or a high school junior in this case, to visit colleges? Now, of course, in my books, something's bad's going to happen wherever they are, because that's what I do. The other example was in Strong Light of Day. This is very personal, not really personal, but it's I think. In Strong Light of Day, I wrote a gay character for the first time, and I got one note from a librarian who said, I've read every one of your books, and I recommend them to your Caitlin Strong books. I recommend them to everybody. I'm not going to do that anymore because you had a gay character in your book. Well, you know what? If that's how you feel, I don't want you to recommend my books anymore. But I didn't say that. I never returned the email. But in that book, it's one of her two surrogate sons who comes out as gay. Caitlin knows. Caitlin figures it out before anybody else. And when you read the book a second time, you can tell by what she says and her mannerisms that she knows. And that's the mark of a story that surprises you. In movies, it's like The Sixth Sense or The Usual Suspects. You get to the end and you see the final twist, and it's like, oh my God, I got to rewatch the movie. How did I miss this? And you realize all the clues were there. All the clues were there to know of who Kaiser Sose was, to know that Bruce Willis was dead. I got to spoiler alert, right?
Right.
All the clues are there. And if you go back and reread Strong Light of Day, her body language, the way she distracts other characters from asking questions that might make him uncomfortable. And when he finally tells her, she says, I know. It's like, what do you think? What's my dad going to think? And so he's not going to care, And I think that reflects today's society. It's one of the great things about young people today. I do a lot of mentoring at Brown University. The stuff that mattered to my generation doesn't matter to them. They don't care. They judge people a whole different way than we did. And it's great to see, and that was reflected in some of my writing.
I just read a statistic today that Gen Z, 52%, get most of their information, news, entertainment, everything on YouTube.
And
it's number one.
It's scary. It's scary. But you know what? You want to look for villains today. I'm probably making a lot of enemies on this show today, but look at Florida and what they're doing with LGBTQ youth. Look what they're doing down there, trying to pass the most ridiculous laws about schools. I mean, you want to talk about villains? I think my next capital crimes book, it'll be DeSantis I use as the surrogate villain. It's like, do these people wake up every morning and just figure out how to make me upset? And if they're making me upset, there's another 70% of the country they're making upset, because we're in the majority. The way I feel, we're the majority in this country. We're the people who believe in helping others and believe that, that government can work and that there's actually things you can trust. And just because you lose, have you noticed? It's like everybody wants a trophy when they lose. And now adults, when their candidate loses, they don't accept the loss. Well, maybe we should just give them a trophy too. Here you lost, but here's a trophy. Go put it on the shelf and shut up. Do
you yell like this when you're writing? Do you drink your coffee and scream? I love it.
No, I saved that for my interviews.
I wish we had more time. We really don't. But how can people get in touch with you? Books are on Amazon, everywhere.
Go to Facebook, Jon Land. You can leave me a message there. Probably some people won't be too happy. You can get me on Twitter at John D. Land. I'm on Twitter all the time. That's my favorite. Love the engagement on Twitter, but I don't do politics on Twitter at all. Zero politics. I save that. You get the benefit of the unfiltered Jon Land, whereas on Twitter they get social media promotion and writing tweet of the day and film tweet of the day and pop culture tweet of the day and stuff like that. So go find me at John D. Land. And also my website is johnlandbooks.com, but I need to do a better job updating.
Okay. Thanks so much for being on PRosé. Hopefully Angela Lansbury's watching and will contact you.
Well, I'm sure you're going to need another drink to go with the one you've already had after talking to me for 30 minutes.
Tequila. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Cheers.
Bye.
Join us next week for another edition of PRosé with Vicky Locke and Cindy Woolley from C2 Communications.